Hello and welcome back to Stop and Go F1. It's now time for our driver ratings for the Miami Grand Prix of 2023, a race which I still would say was actually quite good, despite once again looking on Twitter this morning and people claiming it to be the worst race of all time. I thought there was actually some decent stuff in there. So let's get into the driver ratings for today. We'll start from the back. In the back is where we find the Williams. And Logan Sargent, in his home race, qualified last and finished last. It was an interesting one because there was one point where they said apparently he was third fastest in the speed trap, despite being right at the back. I'm going to give him a 4. I wrote down a 5, but I've convinced myself it's not a 5, it's a 4. If you finish last, I mean, I know the car's not great, but, Alex Albon did far better, but he was expected to do far better. It's a 4. Speaking of Alex Albon, though, he qualified 11th, then went on to finish the race in 14th, and for that I've given him a 7 out of 10. I think the issue with Alex this race was that his qualifying was far too good. He qualified really high up, and then was always just going to fall back down. I mean, if you look at it, he qualified higher than Hamilton did. Who else did he beat in qualifying who he shouldn't really have beaten? Hulkenberg as well. There's a few there who, Lance Stroll, of course. And then he just kind of went back down. 14th is really where you would expect the Williams to be, in the top half of the bottom 10. So I've given him a 7 out of 10. I was hoping maybe for some points for the Williams this weekend, but unfortunately not. Moving on to Nick De Vries. Now here's an interesting weekend for you. So qualifying, he qualifies 15th and beats his teammate in qualifying for the first time this season. Then off the line, he instantly drives his car into the back of Lando Norris and would eventually finish 18th. I've given him a 3 out of 10, because despite beating your teammate in qualifying, it's not really worth much if the first thing you do is nearly total your car. So it's a 3 out of 10 for Nick De Vries. His teammate Yuki Tsunoda qualified 17th, finished the race in 11th, meaning that Yuki, in the first 5 races, has either finished 10th or 11th every single time, which is incredibly consistent. I just guess he was wishing it was a couple places higher. Imagine if he finished 9th and 10th every other time. But I've given him an 8 out of 10, because I think coming from 17th on a grid, which apparently lots of people are saying is very difficult to overtake in, and get to 11th place, just outside the top 10, that's a great job there from Yuki. He's really proven himself this year. The only thing I can really think of in terms of negative things for Yuki this year is if Pierre Gasly was still in the Alpha alongside him, would he look this good? Is he just looking this good because Nick De Vries is really struggling at the minute, or is he looking this good because he is actually getting very good? And I'm going to go with that one, hopefully. Moving on to the Hasses now, and Nico Hulkenberg qualified 12th, finished in 15th. I'm giving him a 5 out of 10. I think this is an average race for Nico. We didn't really see much of him just on the screen. He did go backwards, but he qualified a hell of a lot higher than he really should have. I've given him a 5. And then his teammate, though, Kevin Magnussen, he unbelievably qualified 4th, finished the race in 10th, getting a point for the Haas team. I've given him a 10 out of 10. Because if you watch my review of the race, you'll know he was absolutely the highlight for me. Not only did he manage to score a point in the Haas, not only did he qualify in 4th, but the racing he put on, I think, is the best he's ever done. The defending and the attacking of Charles Leclerc, which he was doing pretty much consistently for the entire race, was incredible. For me, Kevin Magnussen was easily driver of the day. And I looked into the voting for driver of the day, the percentages and stuff they put on the website. He wasn't even in the top 5. I'm like, is everyone else watching a different race from me? Because everyone said this was the most boring race in the history of Formula 1, which it wasn't. Nobody voted for Kevin Magnussen to be driver of the day, which he was. Unbelievable stuff. I'm giving justice for Kevin here, giving him a 10. Let's move on to Aston. Oh dear. Lance Stroll qualified 18th, finished the race in 12th. So he did gain positions, but he couldn't even get into the top 10. Now, why did he qualify 11th? They're saying it's because he was put out on a scrub set of tyres, but so was Alonso, and you're in the second fastest car on the grid. How the hell are you qualifying 18th? Then in the race, He had a good strategy. He stayed out of trouble. Couldn't finish in the top 10. I mean, if you look at the constructors' standings right now, despite Alonso finishing 3rd or 4th in every race, Mercedes are only 6 points behind Aston Martin. Lance Stroll needs to pick it up now. He had a good race in Bahrain where his hands were bloody broken, but since then he hasn't shone once. He needs to pick it up here. He's in the best car he's ever had. I was going to give him a 1 out of 10, but then I remembered he did some very good defensive driving against George Russell, so he's getting a 2 out of 10. Questions have always been asked of Lance Stroll, and I've always been very defensive of him and said that he was a lot better than people give him credit for. This season he's proven me wrong, and I don't like being proven wrong, so Lance, pick it up. On to his teammate though, Fernando Alonso, qualified 2nd, finished the race in 3rd. Fernando Alonso back at it again on the lower step of the podium. I've given him a 9 out of 10 because, obviously if he'd finished 2nd or finished 1st, easy 10 out of 10. But with the Red Bulls going as they are, that's not very likely. We're saving the 10 for him though. We gave him a 10 in Bahrain, and since then it's been a lot of 9s. But we're saving the 10 for a later date. Simple 9 out of 10. Good job from Fernando. Managed everything really well. Nice little battle with Carlos Sainz towards the start of the race. Later on, he's trundling along in 3rd place, and he's managing to watch TV at the same time. What a guy. 9 out of 10. On to Alfa Romeo. Zhou Guan Yu qualified 14th, finished the race in 16th. Gave him a 5 out of 10. So we're getting back to this Alfa Romeo thing where we just don't see them for the entire race, and they just turn up at the end. I can't really remember anything that Zhou did. He went backwards. He had a decent race. It was okay. Valtteri Bottas, though, he finally woke up. He's had a few bad races in a row here, but he did shine here. Qualifying in 10th, so the first Alfa to get into Q3 this season. Finished the race in 13th. I think as well at some point on the commentary they said this race was the first time that an Alfa had done a lap in the top 10 this season, which goes to show how bad things are going. Even though I think they have scored a point, haven't they? Yeah, they both scored points, so that can't be true. Maybe it's in the last 3 races or something. Anyway, I've given him a 7 out of 10, because I thought it was a decent job from Valtteri. Oh dear, it's time to talk about the McLarens. And the McLarens who brought all these upgrades to Baku, looking very strong in Baku, got into Q3, and I think did they score points? I can't quite remember, but they did look a lot stronger in Baku than they had the rest of the season. Lando Norris did that big interview saying, "This is the McLaren we should have brought to the first race. Now we're here to fight with the midfield. We're going to be getting onto the back of them and hopefully charging towards the likes of the Ferraris, Mercedes and the Aston Martins." Well, that went out of the window this week because McLaren were bloody terrible. Oscar Piastri qualifies 19th, finishes 19th. I gave him a 3 out of 10. Lando Norris qualified 16th, finished the race in 17th. I've given him a 4 out of 10. I know the car is awful. I know it's awful. But I never really saw anything that told me that these guys are bloody pushing it to the limit. I never saw anything that was like that. Like when I saw Kevin Magnussen or Alex Albon, they were bloody going for it. They knew the car was slow, but they were still going for it. Whereas whenever I saw the McLarens, I never really got that. And also they had an awful sticker on the side that says that their sponsors are full of nicotine. And that's not great. It doesn't look great. And also it tells me that your sponsors are full of nicotine. I didn't know what Velo was before. I googled it. It's a pouch of nicotine that you put in your mouth when you chew. And then when it's done, you don't put it in the bin. You clean it out and use it again. That's disgusting. Awful stuff. Right. Let's talk about McLaren because they suck. On to Alpines though. Pierre Gasly did well. He qualified in 5th, finished the race in 8th. I've given him an 8 out of 10. I thought that was a really good race from him. Really shone here. There's been lots of questions about him, especially after Australia, where he did a fantastic race and ruined it all at the end. But I think he's doing well in this Alpine. He beat his teammate in both qualifying and the race. Looking really good. Esteban Ocon, he qualified 8th, finished the race in 9th. I've given him a 7, because that's about what you'd expect. I think that was a decent race from Alpine. On to Mercedes then, and George Russell qualified in 6th and finished the race in 4th. I've given him a 9 out of 10 because Mercedes have been struggling like all hell this weekend. I thought they were going to really struggle here in the race, but George Russell managed to pull it out really well and finish the race just outside the top 3. So that is a 9 out of 10. Then Lewis Hamilton qualified in 13th and finished the race in 6th. Now this was an interesting one because, doing all those moves he did, gaining all those positions, fantastic stuff, fantastic race. But the reason he had to do that was because his qualifying really wasn't very good at all out in Q2. In the end, I have given him an 8, which I think might even still be a bit too high personally. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for Lewis. On to Carlos Sainz, who qualified 3rd and finished the race in 5th. I thought this was actually Carlos's best race, apart from, of course, the Stewart penalty. In the first half of the race, he was really shining with his battles against Fernando Alonso, looking really good there. The second half of the race, he did kind of disappear a bit. I've given him a 7, but he was definitely the stronger of the 2 Ferraris. Let's talk about the other one. Charles Leclerc qualified 7th, finished the race in 7th. I've given him a 5. Quite frankly, I might change it to a 4. I'm changing it to a 4. I was really, really not impressed with Charles Leclerc this weekend. Crashes in FP2 and Q3. Not really anywhere in terms of the race. As I said, battling the Haas for most of it. I mean, you see people like Russell, Hamilton, who all got past him. I mean, Max started 2 positions behind him and ended up finishing 6 positions ahead and by quite a marginal lead. I know the Red Bull is a lot faster, but Charles Leclerc really did not shine this weekend at all. Not great for him. I've given him a 4 out of 10. On to the Red Bulls. Sergio Perez qualified on pole, finished the race in 2nd. I've given him a 9 because I thought he handled the race really well. I mean, just at the end, though, there was not much he could do. Max was on much better tyres, and the fact that he didn't overtake him instantly and Sergio was able to put up a fight for about half a lap, maybe a lap, goes to show how good Sergio actually was. So that's a 9 out of 10 for him. And Max qualified 9th, finished the race in 1st. And I've given him a 9 out of 10 as well. On the race, it was a 10 out of 10 performance, but in terms of qualifying, I know he couldn't get his 2nd lap in, but the reason he didn't get his 1st lap in is because he messed up. And I don't think you can give him a 10 out of 10 for the entire weekend based on that. So I've given him a 9. So there you go. There are my driver ratings for this weekend, meaning that the driver of the weekend for me was Kevin Magnussen, and the worst one this weekend was Lance Stroll. Now, tomorrow there's a video out on this channel about Gunther Steiner's new book. Then next weekend there is no F1, but there will be a video that I have to make today about my time at Silverstone over the couple days, Monday, Tuesday. So I went to Silverstone, went to a few factories and stuff. Really interesting video that'll come out next weekend. So stay subscribed for that. Until then, I'll see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.